Hello and welcome to Psychologically Speaking. I'm Dr. Gemma Leigh Roberts.
And I'm Erin Shrimpton.
And this is the podcast where we explore psychology ideas and think about how they apply to everyday life. So Erin, what are we focusing on this week?
So this week we're going to talk about something that's coming up quite a lot, and you brought my attention to it with a report that we can talk about, but it's all about the idea of using AI as a therapist. So we're going to talk about why we're using it. There's a huge explosion in people using AI chatbots as companions and therapists. We're going to talk about the dangers of it. Then we're going to think about, if it is a good idea, how can you use it safely or appropriately?
Okay, so it was looking at uses for AI in 2024 versus 2025. So in 2024, the main uses for AI was firstly generating ideas, then therapy and companionship, then specific search, and then editing text. Generating ideas, totally get. I use AI a lot for that. And actually, I quite naively assumed that actually was the top reason, like really the only reason that we're using ChatGPT. The therapy and companionship, number two, completely blew my mind.
Yeah.
But wait for it, because we haven't even got to 2025 yet. Specific search, I guess that's like a search engine tool, and editing text. Like I kind of get the practical versions, like the practical applications. Yeah. Anyway, jump forward to 2025. The biggest reason people are using AI is actually for therapy and companionship.
Wow.
Which blows my mind. Like totally blows my mind. The second use is organising my life.
I need to get that into my life. I did not know that AI could organise me.
100%. I know. Me too. Me too. Number three, finding purpose.
How?
And then number four, enhanced learning. So the learning I
get that.
Totally. And I think it's an amazing tool for that.
But the one thing I would say about AI that we'll probably get to in this discussion is that it cannot glean meaning from the conversation that you're having in a way that a human can. So I mean, I'm intrigued. I'm open-minded to hearing how people are actually using it to find purpose. I'm really intrigued by that.
I totally agree. But do you know what's interesting here? So firstly, I had no idea that AI was becoming a therapist and companion for so many people. Anyway, in 2024, so it's obviously jumped up in 2025. So that's interesting, learning. I'm also really intrigued to figure out how that's working. And I think what we should talk about today is to kind of unpack that a bit and think about, why is it happening?
Yeah.
What are the implications? What does it mean for us? And where's it going?
Why are we using it?
There are multiple reasons. I think one of the main reasons is that it's really hard to access really good therapy. And obviously, you know, I'm in the UK, you're in Ireland, but across the world, it's really hard to firstly find a good therapist. And, you know, I'm starting therapy next week, and it was really challenging to figure out what kind of therapist I needed, what experience I want that person to bring, where they're located. Do I want to do it virtually? Do I want to do it face to face? Genuinely, I found it a really hard process to go through. And
you're well educated about this.
It's my
area.
world.
It's literally you were in this world. So
and I really struggled. And I was also a bit like, I'm not quite sure where to turn for this. Now, I kind of wish that I'd used AI a bit to help me with that. But I'll kind of come back to that. But I also think funds, like being able to pay for therapy, is getting more and more challenging. Like there's so many people who would think that's an expense that I just can't commit to. I could never pay for that. They might know that they want some help, or they could do some help, but they just either can't access that help or can't afford to access that help. And when you look at something like therapy with that lens, it makes me think, is it a good thing then that we have AI to help us with some of that? But another reason I think maybe we're seeing more and more of this is that we're just using AI more.
Yeah.
Like if you think, I'd say I'm quite slow to the party on this one, but if we think about how we're using, I'm going to say ChatGPT here because that's kind of what I'm using at the moment. it originally started with like this idea generation and
writing your emails for you.
writing my emails, be like,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But it's kind of progressing, because I'm hearing people be like, oh, I use it to, create a dinner party menu or come up, I'm talking very kind of flippantly here about this, but there's loads of reasons you might be using it. And I think the more that we use AI in our lives, the more it becomes normal.
Yeah.
And I also
That's a really good point.
kind of feel like I'm getting to know ChatGPT a little bit. Like, have you seen this whole thing about we shouldn't be saying thank you to ChatGPT?
Because of the environmental cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because every time we write something, also I don't talk into it, but I know you can like speak into it as well. That's an environmental cost. That's using energy. So if we're saying things we don't need to say and then it's replying, we don't need to be wasting that energy.
Yeah.
But trying to train myself not to say thank you or that's a great idea or like in my head I'm kind of almost thinking of my ChatGPT because I think of it as mine.
Yes.
As not a person. I don't think of it as a person, but I think of it as something that is kind of not real, but like tailored to me and knows me a bit. And obviously that is completely false. So I can see how people would start to build relationships.
Yeah, definitely.
With AI.
To add to that, that person who you're imagining, although not a person, is in our heads when you're typing into it, completely unbiased, non-judgmental. Unlike if you're sat here with a person, it's really hard not to put your guard up a little bit because you're sitting with a human being. So I can imagine that it's easier sometimes to share your innermost thoughts with a chatbot who you think, this is going no further because it's just going into my chatbot. We might just talk about the danger of that a little bit later, but because it isn't not going anywhere. That data is definitely staying somewhere.
100%.
But in the as part of this discussion around the reasoning why people are using it in this way, I think that's a huge one because it's much easier to share your thoughts with something that you don't believe will go any further.
And it's such an important point because think how hard it is when you first start seeing a new therapist. Like, I know, like for example, I'm going to have to do this next week. And I can already feel how uncomfortable it's going to be. I don't really want to do it, in all honesty. It's not something that fills me with joy. I've had to kind of rearrange my day around it, knowing that I'm probably not going to feel great after.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be a bit anxious before. I know it's something that's really good for me. I know it's something I need to do, but you can also see how that could be a barrier for people as well, like getting in a room with someone and telling them things that are really challenging. I can see how it's easier to do that with a bit of distance, i.e. like physical distance because this thing's virtual, but also distance in that it's not human. So there's a species distance, although it's not a species, so I don't know if that works. But I can see how that's appealing.
That we know of, yes.
And I'm not totally anti this, by the way. I'm a bit on the fence, like
I
curious.
am very curious about it, I
think it's an interesting thing to explore.
Very much so. So should we talk about the dangers? Okay, so what about the dangers?
So here's what I'm thinking in terms of why we might want to be careful using this approach. Firstly, the biggest thing that springs to mind is that we know that ChatGPT is not very good at challenging. So it has, and I'm talking about ChatGPT here, but this applies to all AI as it stands at the moment. We know that it's not been trained to tell us the opposite of what we're thinking. And I'm seeing a lot at the moment on social media and lots of articles around we need to be training whatever AI we use to challenge us and kind of giving it permission, but also, I guess, instructing it to challenge our thinking and not just agreeing, because it's been built to be a positive experience. Because, think about the creators of this. If it's a positive experience and the thing is agreeing with us and always building on what we're saying, we're going to go back.
Yeah.
We're going to use that tool over
It feels great.
a different tool. It feels great.
Yeah.
And sometimes like my little chat GPT person, it's not a person, but that's how I think of it, kind of, is really complimentary. We'll be like, that was a great idea. Or something would be like, great catch. Yeah. And I point out something it hasn't done. I'm like, I know. Thanks. I can't help but like actually get a little buzz of like, oh, I'm glad you noticed. Thank you. But it's a machine, that's what it's been trained to do. So if we think about that in a therapy context, part of speaking to a trained, qualified, experienced therapist is that they're going to challenge you on your assumptions, your beliefs, your behaviors, your perspective. And that's, that's why I'm prepping myself next week. And I know it's going to be an uncomfortable experience because I've been through this before. And I don't really like that.
Because when those things are taken away, it does feel like the rug is taken out from under you, doesn't it?
Because that's your world.
That's how you build your world around you. Is, you build your safety net with all of these assumptions and beliefs. And in order to get up and function in life in your day, you kind of have to use these as your as your parameters. And when somebody challenges them, it really does take a bit of time to actually recover from that. And that's definitely not something that an AI is going to want to do for the reasons that you just outlined.
It's not going to. And the problem we have is it's like being in an echo chamber.
Yeah.
So if I go to AI, whatever platform I'm using, with a problem. I don't know, say something's happened at work and I want to solve some kind of tricky relationship that I've got with someone at work. It's never going to see that situation from the other person's point of view. So it's probably not going to challenge like, could there be another way of looking at this? Or have you thought about this? So that's one thing. But also it can only respond to the data I give it. And the data I give someone is biased because it's from my point of view. Exactly as we were saying, our assumptions, our beliefs, our world around us. But that doesn't mean it's right. It never gets the full context. It's only going to agree with what I'm saying. And my fear is you could end up in a bit of a rut where if something you trust keeps agreeing with you, you're going to think that more and more. And sometimes in therapy, sometimes that might be helpful, but sometimes in therapy, we need to look at things from a different perspective because we've got ourselves stuck or we're in a really challenging situation. I think it's a danger, and I don't necessarily think it's, the worst thing in the world, but I think it's a bigger danger when we don't know it's doing that.
Yes, when we're not aware of it.
That's the issue, I think, for that.
So I've been reading recently as well about, people who maybe experience psychosis or are suffering with sort of delusional thoughts. And so this would be, this isn't sort of your everyday user of ChatGPT, or of any of the chatbots, but somebody who might be prone to delusions and are using ChatGPT to reinforce those beliefs. That can be really dangerous because ChatGPT doesn't know that the person sitting in front of them might be delusional. So,
well, ChatGPT doesn't even know what delusional, like what that is and what that could mean to someone.
So it's called, they've now termed it, and this is all so early, and it's, there's no research on this stuff yet because it's so in its infancy. It's called AI mediated delusions, basically. So you can see how if you're somebody who's prone to constructing certain beliefs about a situation, and even actually in a kind of a non-disordered way, like we're all prone to distorted thinking. We all have these self-limiting beliefs. And actually, that could even be dangerous in itself if ChatGPT is kind of agreeing with us on something that is actually limiting our progress. That worries me a lot. And again, you'd have to be, as you say, aware of it in the first place in order to prompt it to let you know, or to make sure that it's taking any kind of distorted thinking into account. But you have to be aware of it in the first place. So it's
hard. And most of us aren't. Like, I still... not in terms of therapy, but I still haven't trained ChatGPT to disagree with me. And I know I'm supposed to, it's on my to-do list. It's literally on my to-do list to like put stuff in my calendar every day. And I haven't done it because I'm not quite sure how to do it. So I obviously need to figure that out.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a prompt somewhere.
There probably is a prompt somewhere. But, I know that it just agrees with me. And I still haven't prompted it to not just agree with me, even though I know I'm supposed to, even though I know it's going to give me better results that are more useful. So even just having the knowledge sometimes, the actual then application of that is really tricky. What I would say, so we're talking about the dangers, and there's also been cases of like reported in the press of like horrific outcomes of people using ChatGPT that have obviously spoken to it in some like either via typing or speaking, really tough challenges they're facing in life. And it's had like horrific consequences at the end of that. We know there's a real danger here.
Huge danger, yeah.
And it kind of feels like going back, 10 years or maybe longer, when we weren't really quite sure what the dangers of social media were, or, we weren't quite sure how to help kids use that safely. And I think we're in exactly the same place, although maybe slightly scarier place at the moment. So we are going to have to be figuring this out as we go. But I think conversations like this help because, we're not going to have all the answers to this, but just being aware, I think, is helpful.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't want therapy and mental health to be an elitist subject. I don't want it to be only a certain population can access this stuff for, financial reasons, but also just knowing how to access this information. So part of me is really pleased that this could help everyone potentially access some tools, strategies, support, advice that can help them in life. And that makes me really happy and really hopeful.
It feels though a little bit cart before horse, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That we're basically having to test it on the general population before we then put processes in place to keep us safe. That worries me a bit because it means that we're having to discover and experiment with this before we realize, oh, actually that wasn't ideal.
100%. And also, there'll probably be certain populations or demographics that are going to test this before others. I'm thinking like younger people, for example, like before me. I feel like an absolute dinosaur when it comes to, to AI. I mean, in my head, I feel like I'm like cutting edge with the stuff I'm doing. I'm clearly not. It's not organising my life.
Why don't you ask your chatbot if you are cutting edge? See what it says. See what it says. I'm sure it'll
genuinely. Shall I ask it?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, here we go. Wow. Okay. Right. Just wanted to get your opinion on how well you think I use ChatGPT.
Well, from what I've seen, you use it really effectively. You come in with very clear ideas and you're not afraid to experiment or ask for tweaks until everything fits just right, which is honestly a great way to get the most out of it. So I'd say you're doing a fantastic job.
Okay. What are your thoughts on ChatGPT as a therapist for people?
That's a really thoughtful question. So ChatGPT can be a supportive tool for things like offering reflections, maybe helping people think through challenges or giving a little bit of a different perspective. But it's definitely not a replacement for a human therapist, especially when it comes to dealing with deeper emotional issues or complex mental health needs. I think it's more like a helpful companion for everyday reflections rather than a substitute for professional care.
Wow, that's very thoughtful.
I'm glad you think so. I always try to keep it balanced and thoughtful. If you've got any more questions like that, feel free to ask away.
Thanks.
That was, don't you feel good after that interaction?
I actually do.
Yeah.
Do you feel good listening to it?
I even feel good. I'm vicariously feeling good watching you having that conversation.
Wow.
So
that has blown my mind a little bit. Again.
So, and look, many of us do need positive reinforcement in our lives. That's for sure. Life is tough, and it is really what we know we need in our daily lives, whether it's in work or at home, is constant little reminders of things that we're doing well, because it's so easy to get into a spiral of focusing on what's not going well. So from that perspective, I think that's great. It's great to be reminded of the things that you're doing well.
I kind of feel like maybe an AI therapist could actually be better than a not so great human therapist.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a load of controversy in Ireland recently of people who actually aren't therapists putting themselves out there as therapists. We have to be aware of that. There's people out there who are giving out advice. And even if you think about on TikTok or on Instagram, or, there's lots of people out there who actually do not have the training to be giving the advice that they're giving.
Yeah.
And people are listening to it. So actually, the large language model that is ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is actually does have access to a lot of useful therapeutic intervention and information. So that's, as you say, that could potentially be more beneficial to somebody than somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. There's one more thing that we haven't covered in the dangers, and that is giving all of our data to the broligarchs.
Yes.
Do you want the broligarchs knowing everything about you and all of your innermost thoughts?
You're going to have to explain what a broligarch is. I can't get the word out, and you're going to have to say it as well, because I'm like, oh.
This is I think this is my word of 2025. It is basically the tech bros, and who are essentially now the modern oligarchs, the people who are so wealthy and essentially running the world.
Yeah.
The people who are the owners of all these various tech companies who now have access to all of our data. And if you are putting in, like I was looking this morning at, you know, different things that you could use as therapeutic aids, you know, for journaling or for whatever it is. And I was thinking that's actually a brilliant idea, because we'll talk about this again, but journaling is not something that I'm very good at doing, even though we know how useful it is. I was thinking, gosh, yes, if there was an AI tool that I could journal into, amazing. And then I was thinking, I don't want my data. I don't know what they're doing with that and what they can then advertise to me on the basis of what I've admitted to it on that particular day in a, you know, in a mood where I was feeling a bit vulnerable, for example. One of the reasons I don't journal or I don't diary is because, or I don't have a diary, is because it's always like, well, anything I write down, somebody could potentially find that and read it. Or, you know, you have to think about in 200 years' time, are people going to be looking at our ChatGPT history as, you know, artifacts of, ooh, this is what they were like in 2025.
Yeah,
Wow.
100%. But they might be like what we were like as a population, but someone might also be like, oh, this is what Erin Shrimpton was
My
like.
great-great-grandmother.
Yeah, he's 20.
What a loser.
I know. I really hope they don't have that clip of me talking in and being like, hello, anyone there? They'd be like, oh my God, she was so behind.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, there is the data issue, but there's also the environmental issue as well, which, you know, it's not specific to this conversation about AI, but there's a lot of talk around, should we be using it? Is it ethical? The amount of energy we're using. Yeah. I do feel like for something like good therapy, you know, I would weigh that up as that's actually worth the cost.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't actually know what the cost is though, per se. So that's, you know, something we'd have to think about. But it's a really tricky concept. And the other thing I would say is things we haven't touched on. We are most definitely in a loneliness pandemic, like, or epidemic or pandemic. I don't know. But we're in a world where loneliness is growing. If people are finding comfort, whether that be companionship, whether that be therapy, in a tool that is really accessible, again, part of me thinks that can only be a good, not only be a good thing, but it can partly be a good thing. Yeah. And the other thing I'd say about this is that data, I mean, this is a small report. Like, we're going to put that back into perspective as well. But that data is saying people are doing this. So if we're doing it, do we need to think about how we do it safely?
How we do it well.
So how can we use AI as a therapist safely and effectively?
Well, we really don't know yet the answer to that, I think. But I think from what we've discussed today and from what I've read a little bit about all of this, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Firstly, think of it more as an interim step between not having any support whatsoever and going and seeing a therapist. It might help, you know, to sort your thoughts out a little bit. You could put in what, you know, you're thinking about or what's bothering you, and it can give you some ideas, especially around working out that point around what kind of therapy I might need. So that's something that, you know, it could really help you with. Making sure that you're always aware before you use it in this context, making sure that you're always aware that actually it is likely to agree with you. It is likely to want to make you feel good about what your beliefs are and what you're thinking and what you're planning on doing. And then just keeping that in mind. And then I think maybe telling somebody else, like, it doesn't have to be a therapist, but telling a friend or a family member, I'm speaking a bit to the chatbot at the moment, and it's, you know, helping me out with some of my self-limiting beliefs. You might not put it in those terms, that's a real therapeutic term, but, you know, it's helping me out with some of the challenges that I'm facing. That might even open up a conversation between you and somebody who you trust as well. So you're also adding in another view and another perspective, and it's not just the chatbot that you're speaking to about this. So those are the things that I would be kind of doing. I'd be thinking about it as a way of coming across some potential, as you say, good processes, good ideas, tips that I can use in my day-to-day life to help me overcome moments of overwhelm, to help me overcome challenges that I'm facing at work, challenges that I'm facing in my relationships. Asking it to help me out on, you know, what should I do next? Knowing its limits, knowing that it's not a human being. It doesn't have the nuance of the emotion that a human being will have. Asking it then to guide me on what I should do next. I think that's kind of where I would be going with it. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's great advice. I think knowing about the limitations is really important, because then we can apply that to our own lives. And being clear before we go into this, like being clear about how we're using it. And again, I think the more we're using these tools day to day, we're not always clear about how we use them. You could get a recipe, I could ask for directions, I could ask for an idea. Like there's so many different ways. It's kind of becoming very embedded in our lives. But with something like therapy, so something that a challenge that you're facing that is deep rooted, that potentially relates to a traumatic experience or trauma over time, I think kind of reminding yourself that there will be limitations is really important. And also maybe challenging ourselves a bit to not make AI a massive pillar in our life, like rely on it for everything. I think about my phone. I do everything on my phone. I've got my work on my phone. I film stuff on my phone. I talk to people on my phone. I read. I have to challenge myself to not think of it like a limb, where I'd be like, oh, where's my phone? Like I've lost an arm somewhere. Because there's so like my I don't carry cards. I pay for everything on my phone. And AI can become that as well. And I think the thing with therapy we have to remember is it's very specific. You need someone really well trained who knows what they're doing. There also needs to be a good chemistry as well. So just kind of reminding ourselves of that. But I think it's a great tool for, like you say, figuring out what kind of therapy might be helpful, because there are so many different kinds. And I really struggled with that, figuring out what I need now.
Yeah.
Maybe even helping you find some potential therapists, and perhaps giving you some kind of starter tools, exercises, ideas to get you started. I think is a great place to land.
And then check your privacy settings. Just make sure you've got the privacy also. I'm saying this and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not sure I've done this. So
100% me too. I'm
note
like,
to
add
self,
that to my list.
check privacy settings. But that's also an obvious one. If you don't want your data being harvested and collected in the way that we're fearing it might be in the future, then definitely do that.
So let's wrap up with a really quick, because I think we've gone through this in quite a lot of detail in this episode. A really quick, the good, the bad, the blurry. So we're going to do this every episode.
The bad?
Yeah.
There is no replacement for a human being and the interaction that you get with a real life functioning human being who has full emotional intelligence, who has years of experience, who's able to judge the nuance of your situation. That's just a fact. Even AI says it themselves. In fact, I do you know what? I asked AI, I asked it before we did this episode, a human therapist versus a ChatGPT, and it said, AI can coach your habits, but only people can hold your humanity.
Do you know what that means?
I don't really know what that means. So anyway, I thought that was going to be a profound insight, but actually
it's demonstrated.
It just shows to you that that it's potentially, it has some work to do.
It does have some work to do.
So those are the dangers, the bad. We've covered them, but things like the fact that it doesn't challenge you, that some of your self-limiting beliefs might end up kind of running away with themselves, and that's not good for you, even in kind of normal functioning life, but also if you are prone to any kind of disordered thinking or psychological disorder. And then of course, your data. So that's something that we all have to be concerned about, not just with AI, but with all of our tech use. What about the blurry?
It's all blurry.
It's all blurry, isn't it?
We're working this out as we go. The whole thing is blurry. And I don't know if we'll ever land on a best use strategy. I don't know if we'll ever land on AI that's designed specifically for this, and maybe it gets better. I don't know. I just don't know enough yet. But all we can do is work with what we know now.
Yeah.
And we know this is being used for therapy and for companionship. This is where we are. This is the pros and the cons right now. And I think for now, that's all we can work with.
Right, Gemma, I think it's time for you to introduce the tombola.
I'm not really sure where this idea came from or why this idea occurred. And actually, I'm quite surprised that you just went along with it. And we're like, yeah, that's a great idea. So
I love a tombola.
we have a tombola, which we've had to explain to various people what a tombola actually is. I think it might be a thing that a child from the 80s or 90s might know. But I like the drama of a tombola. Everyone's going to see how this works in a moment. And we have put in here questions from listeners to the podcast or people that follow us that have given us questions that we genuinely don't know what these questions are for us to answer about psychology or challenges people are facing. And I really like this. Firstly, I'm absolutely in love with this tombola. I'm definitely going to get one for my kids for Christmas. I don't know how we're going to use it, but we will have one in the house. But I'm also really excited because I don't know what's in there and I don't know what people want to know.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. Right. So should we give it a whirl?
Let's give it a whirl. I'm
Okay.
excited to give it a spin.
You
Right,
spin.
do you want me to do yeah,
Yes.
okay. Ooh. There we go. The balls are spinning. I'm going to give it a little bit of oomph. And we're ready.
Okay, should I take one out?
You open
I'm
it.
so excited.
I'll hold it for you there.
Okay. Are you feeling like this could be a whole podcast in itself, just like tombola? Okay.
Could be. Maybe we should just do a spin-off. Tombola spin-off.
A spin-off.
Ah, see what I did there?
See what you did there. Oh, you're going to appreciate this question.
Oh, okay. Ooh.
The constant news cycle at the moment is really getting to me. What should I do? Because we talk about this in our own little
Yes.
WhatsApp chat world.
Yeah, it's really hard not to let it get to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have an answer because I would say it is getting to me. But I do have a few things that I would do. But I think the first thing to say is that if it's getting to you, it just means that you're a human being. There's no way around that. But I think limiting your access or limiting your consumption of news, like don't forget these past 10, 20 years has just seen this explosion in the way we consume media. Before that, we were reading a newspaper once a day or turning on the 9 o'clock news and reading it and listening to it, watching it rather. And that was it. You wouldn't necessarily be getting updates on your phone, checking the website, refreshing the news, listening to podcasts. You know, now there's just so many ways that we are hearing about some of the many atrocities that are going on in the world. So I would say just as best you can, try and limit that. Maybe think about the source that you want to get your news from and tap into that once a day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do also think it's a good idea to try and vary your news sources as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, within limits, because you don't want to be looking at all the different news sites. But that's probably the main thing, isn't it? I mean, just limiting your access in the first place to certain times. And then it's all about, obviously, then how you manage and look after yourself around that. Remembering that there are there's only so much power we have as individuals to affect change, but that we do have some power to affect change in the world. And that's also, I think that is quite reassuring as well. We do have some power, but at the moment it is feeling a little bit bleak in how we actually use it.
I really struggle with this because I do limit where I get my news from. Strangely enough, I don't see a lot of things that I don't want to see on social media, actually. So I'm not very active on Instagram.
I'm mainly following comedians on Instagram. That's basically, we send each other, our love language is like sending each other funny memes, usually about parenting on Instagram.
Yeah, normally. Yeah. So I think that really helped, like being very conscious of that. But I'm also in the back of my head, I also don't want to avoid the news totally either because I don't want to be ignorant. I don't want to not know what's going on. It's a really hard balance. And sometimes if I feel like it's tipping over and I'm feeling quite overwhelmed, I do have to scale back. And there might be days or weeks where I think I just can't at the moment let my head go there. And which I also find really challenging because then I feel really guilty about that because it feels quite privileged to be able to be like not letting your head go there.
Yeah.
But also I feel like I'm not going to help to change things in the world if I don't know what's going on. So I really struggle with that balance. There are definitely times in my life where I get quite overwhelmed with the news cycle and things going on in the world. And I have to get quite small in my world.
Yeah.
So I do things like, I sometimes I completely turn off my phone, like just for hours at a time. I just have no contact. Like nothing can get to me. I might take the dog for a walk, try and do something with the kids to just get me. I find being in the moment helps, which I'm not amazing at. I'm very, very much someone that lives in their head. So I do things like mindfulness, which you talk about all the time, like being present, doing something that's just about that moment now. I try and find ways to do that. But as you say, it's part of being human, and we can't totally, we can change some things that are going on. And also I think but we can't change everything. But I also think it's helpful to think about it as try and focus on being the person that you want to be in the world. Yeah. We can't always change everything. We can slowly push towards or help to push towards how we think things should be. But we do, and it's this idea of like what you've got control of and what you haven't. We do have control of who we want to be in the world, how we want to show up, whether that be with our people around us or, you know, people we interact with, or doing our best to try and change things, you know, bigger things in life where we can. But I totally get this. Like you say, it's bleak sometimes and it's hard.
Actually, I love that. Have you ever read the book on burnout by Emily and Amelia Nagoski?
Yes, I have.
And how they talk about, you know, when you feel a stressor, you need to complete the cycle. You need to do something about that stress to move through it. And that's what I feel is really damaging about some of the news cycle at the moment, is that it's coming at us. And then we can't do anything about it. You can't do anything to move through it. So even just finding one thing that you might have a little bit of power to change, exactly as your example suggests, just how you're showing up in the world, doing something that makes you feel like, okay, I've made a small bit of difference in somebody's life in a good way, in a positive way. And it's not obviously fixing the problems of the world at large, but it is at least moving through that cycle for you.
Yeah.
And then that continues to allow you to show up in a way, you know, one of the things that I think is important as parents is to be educating our kids on what's going on in the world in a, you know, in an appropriate way, obviously, so that they will show up when they get older and hopefully change something too. So you have to focus on just the small things that we can affect change around.
First episode, new format, loving it. If people want to get in contact, everyone wants to put their questions in my favourite thing in the world, the tombola, my pride and joy. How can we do that? So you can comment if you're watching or listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, drop a comment and we'll see that, and it could end up being one of our questions. Equally, people could DM us if it's something that you don't want to comment. Equally, we'd really like to know if there's any topics that people want us to cover, or things on your mind, or things that are interesting to do with psychology in the world, or just humans in the world that might pop up. And whilst you're thinking about comments and that kind of thing, it might be a nice opportunity to rate the podcast, share it. We're new. We need the word to get out there. And hopefully we're hoping this is going to be something that's helpful for people, interesting and helpful. That's kind of our objectives, I guess. So yeah, anything that people can do to help us with that, liking, sharing, I don't know what the other, rating. I mean,
I believe, yeah.
This is the person that didn't know you could talk into AI till about 20 minutes ago. So any technical stuff that can do to get the word out there, we would very much appreciate the support. Right. Until next time.
Until next time.